Luke Belmar was just sued by a former business partner for millions of dollars alleging fraud. We might have a pretty big fake guru on our hands. But first, we'll start with this clip.
Bro, I had a $4 million house. I got rid of it. Why?
How much?
$4 million.
I've been told that he claims to have owned this house, however, after a lawsuit was found in Puerto Rico, alleging $186,000 was owed by Luke and his wife due to early termination of the lease. Thanks for this tweet, Michael Ringer. I was also told by Steve that this is the case and they haven't been able to find him to serve him.
How much do you spend on it, if you don't mind me asking?
Probably about $90,000 to $110,000 a month on distribution.
Distribution of his content. So this is the same strategy implemented by Andrew Tate, Iman Gadzhi, Luke Belmar, handful of others. They figured out that you could create a lot of accounts and push your podcast, chop up the podcast clips, send it out to thousands of accounts, and that's how these guys got so well known in a very short amount of time. If you aren't familiar, he's a pretty big influencer, millions of followers throughout all of the platforms, 730,000 here on Instagram. What he did well, he went on a lot of podcasts. He's a pretty good guest because he gets millions of views for all these podcasts, and so he's able to develop this persona of this entrepreneur. Well, we might find out a little later who was actually paying for it. The lawsuit filed the other day. Steve Tan is the plaintiff, suing Luke, that's his real name, and his wife, and Capital Club, the company they co-founded. We gotta go back to 2018 when Luke messaged Steve directly via social media to help him with his personal brand growth. Took him a little while to realize that Luke's touted success and brand growth merely consisted of buying fake bot followers for his accounts. We know this to be true because if you've been following this channel for a while, many of the fake gurus do this, foreshadowing the smoke and mirrors Luke would use over Steve Tan throughout their friendship. Uh-oh. Steve's alleging that with his support, Luke cultivated an online persona portraying himself as a successful entrepreneur, making tens of millions of dollars in e-commerce and cryptocurrency. We're going to find out in a minute just how much he invested in Luke to make this possible.
And how much did you make from the dropshipping?
Generated over $16
million revenue.
I love how the guy adds in at the end revenue, right? Just want to clarify. Hey, good on him. 16 million. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Steve says that's not entirely accurate. And we also know with these drop shippers, the net profit is a fraction of this. However, this is his persona, is that he got his start making millions of dollars in e-commerce. I scrolled to the bottom of Luke's Instagram account to take a screenshot to show you that back in the day, back in 2020, all of his posts were around e-commerce and his store allegedly doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales.
What do you know about PancakeSwap? I got the ability to ask him a question. So I said, okay, this coin is sitting at a $25 million market cap. Let me buy 1% supply for $250,000, $250K. And I made about $5.5 million over the course of a year and a half on that specific play.
Between e-commerce and crypto, Luke has built this persona that he's made tens of millions of dollars online. If it's true or not, we'll never fully know, but Steve claims it's not entirely accurate. Someone reached out to me directly and said that Luke in the past has promoted crypto projects, and apparently these influencers get paid a lot of money to do so. I don't believe this is one of them because in one of the posts he said he got paid $0 to promote KTA, but I just want to use this to highlight that some influencers get paid a significant amount of money for these crypto projects. And I also want to point out this tweet right here. I think Crypto King is the guy that scammed Logan Paul, but he tweeted, remember when you sold out for $15K in an exchange no one had ever heard of? I don't know the full story there. I'm just reading a tweet on this one. However, it sounds like there might be some stuff in Luke's past where he was promoting scams and getting paid to do so. It's fake guru time. June 5th, 2020, Luke published a press release falsely portraying Mr. Tan as his business partner. They were not business partners in any capacity, but it was a deliberate misrepresentation to associate Mr. Tan's reputation, credibility, and goodwill with Luke's venture without his knowledge, consent, or authorization. Many of these claims were exaggerated or false. Of course they are. All of these press releases, all the fake guru press releases are false. I'll show you in just a second, but it was demonstrated by the motto defendant Luke lived by: fake it till you make it. Sounds like all the fake gurus out there. Here's the Yahoo article, which was obviously a paid press release. If you've been following this channel for a while, you remember back in June 2020, the fake guru playbook where they'd pay for these BS press releases. Luke claimed to be business partners with Steve Tan. I've been told that Steve's pretty legitimate in the e-commerce space. So this was obviously him trying to leverage Steve's goodwill to say, hey, I'm legitimate too. Losing millions to a business partner will certainly affect your mental health, but thanks to today's sponsor, BetterHelp, we all can have access to a therapist who can provide us with helpful, unbiased advice if our mental health is suffering. I went to therapy a couple years ago when I moved to Vegas because I was socially isolated and feeling really lonely. I think our mental health is similar to our physical, spiritual, and mental health in that we can always be improving. I didn't realize this until I went going to therapy, but we can always be looking to get better. A therapist will listen, ask questions, and help you see things from new perspectives. They can give you pivotal advice and techniques to help make positive changes in your life. BetterHelp is doing a great job at making access to therapy easier. Fill out a questionnaire and you will be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple days. With over 7,300 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. The therapist that they pick for you will have plenty of experience dealing with whatever you're going through. Every single one of their therapists is licensed, has a master's or doctorate degree, and has spent over 3 years and 1,000 hours working with people just like you. If you think therapy is for you, you can join the over 4 million people who have used BetterHelp. Use my link down below, betterhelp.com/Spencer Cornelia, or choose Spencer Cornelia during signup for a 10% discount off your first month of therapy. In May 2022, they formally agreed to co-found Capital Club.
No, what's the business model of Capital Club backend?
So it's a very simple business model. The model is to build the largest entrepreneur network in the world. And all it is the repurposing of membership money to scale the business. So it's not for Luke to get rich. In fact, I haven't made a lot of money from it.
It's the same business model Andrew Tate, Iman Gadzhi, Luke Belmar. They're almost all the same guy. What it really is, it's just a platform. You can go sign up for courses by what are believed to be experts. I don't have any way to validate or invalidate that, but you pay a membership fee, maybe $100, $5,000 up front. I don't know what it is, but you can sign on and have access to many courses. So it's one platform full of a lot of guru courses: day trading, e-commerce, crypto, drop shipping, you name it, all the make money schemes. It's all within this one platform. Steve alleges he invested more than $4 million into the business, with over $3 million of it going to media, marketing, infrastructure, and events. Remember, just a minute ago, Luke alleges $100,000 went to distribution of his content. That's how he got famous. Was it his money or was it Steve investing in him? Nearly $1 million of that went to payroll and over $300,000 worth of interest-free loans to the business. It was a success. So within a year and a half of starting it, once they went public, generated more than $2.2 million in revenue in October of 2023. Following the next 2 months, in total, the 3 months, it grossed over $4 million in just 3 months.
When I launched Capital Club, the digital platform last year, and we did almost 8 figures in the first launch with no paid traffic, I didn't tell people what they were getting.
Yeah.
It was a black page with a checkout, and it did almost $10 million, and people paid without knowing.
Steve invested in Luke. He spent millions of dollars knowing that he could build up this persona of being a very successful entrepreneur. It clearly worked. Right away, after a year and a half, after spending millions of dollars in building up Luke's persona, he was able to sell a course. And then you make all the money on the back end, over 8 figures by being a course seller. Steve's claiming that he and his team built Luke's personal brand, including the use of their personal resources and connections to get Luke on these unique podcast opportunities, generated over 10 million social media followers, 2 billion content views. Remember, that's how these guys got so famous so fast. Millions of dollars were put into their brand. These achievements were the direct result of systems created by Steve Tan. He claims he even used his personal resources and connections to get Luke on these podcasts and interviews. This is where things started to take a little turn. So while they were operating Capital Club together, sounds like Luke began developing a competing internet-based business offering called Gem Hunters. In Luke's Instagram and X bio, he has a link to his Gem Hunters membership community. Remember, Luke has kind of positioned himself as this crypto expert, a guy that's made a lot of money in crypto. So Gem Hunters, this online membership community, was a place where you'd find Luke's hidden gems. I've been told that some people were paying thousands of dollars to join this community. What Steve alleges is the business model is identical to Capital Club's. It was all built on the same audience, systems, and staff that Plaintiff had already developed and funded. So Luke used the Capital Club's intellectual property, their assets, and personnel to build out a separate enterprise. Luke recruited employees and contractors under the pretext of restructuring back to the United States. So basically, hey, employees and contractors, we're going to shift you over to this business over here. Luke directed Capital Club employees and course experts to sign new contracts. So remember, the platform itself, there's a lot of different course creators within the platform. And so he got them to sign new contracts. So that maneuver allowed him to take away the rights, all their rights away from Capital Club into his new competing, the keyword here, competing business venture. Luke used this tactic to transfer ownership of course content, intellectual property, and personnel. What is so dirty about this is, remember, $4 million was invested to this company, Capital Club, by Steve. And what's alleged is that Luke basically said, screw your partnership. I'm going to take everything and everyone. I'm going to come over here to Gem Hunters. And within a year, he got to 2,500 paying members, approximately $10 million in subscription revenue. Steve believes that Gem Hunters had about 80 to 90% of the members of that community came from Capital Club ecosystem. So imagine spending $4 million building up this ecosystem in this business over here, only to have your business partner take it all away and not compensate you in any way. To date, Luke has derived over $15 million in profits from this competing Keyword, competing venture, a clear violation of the basic duties of partnership.
Everybody's fake. You can crack the code. What's the code? Be fucking legit. And people don't even tap into their fullest potential because they want to be somebody else.
I'm clipping him a little out of context here, but I find this quote a little interesting within the context of this lawsuit.
I've just witnessed that when you provide so much value up front and people trust you, then it's just so much easier to make money long term.
Steve trusted Luke. Sounds like he was burnt though. In late 2024, Steve indicated that he wanted to leave the partnership. By then, he was probably really disappointed with how it was playing out. He felt taken advantage of. So Luke agreed to buy out Steve's interest in Capital Club if, major if, Steve transferred everything over to him. Luke represented that Steve would be compensated in full if he agreed to transfer over all the assets of the business. Whoever held these credentials, these would be logins, access to social media accounts, would control essentially the entire business. But what Steve alleges is that Luke's plan, his intention, goal, and design was to obtain these credentials under false pretenses so that he could seize exclusive control of Capital Club. So he had gem hunters, and then he was going to take over Capital Club. But what happens if he takes over Capital Club and doesn't even pay Steve? And even worse, he cuts off his access to the business and divert its revenues and assets for his own benefit. Steve alleges that he and his team dedicated several months of effort to ensure a smooth transition for Luke and his wife, but in October 2024, Luke intensified his demands. He wanted to pressure Steve to hand over all remaining credentials and controls. This was a calculated scheme to take full control of Capital Club. Steve hands over all the assets, the logins, the workflows, everything to Luke. But within a couple days of receiving full access, Luke locked him out of everything. Steve claims that Luke came to him with a term sheet. The problem was it was strategically used as a carrot so that Steve would hand over access to all the back-end systems, customer data, operational assets. This term sheet was a manipulative device. Basically, what Luke was trying to do was stall, delay, and ultimately secure full operational control of Capital Club without ever paying Steve a single dollar. He was saying, hey, here's how I'll pay you over time. Just give me access to everything today. I'm going to run the company. We're cash flow positive, and I'm going to pay you over time. But what Steve is alleging is that Luke's true motives became unmistakably clear by June 2025. He never had an interest in honoring the buyout agreement. The partnership resolution strung him along with legal sounding excuses in the illusion of a deal. So what he's saying is Luke was stringing him along. He said, hey, I'm going to pay you out. But once Luke took full control, he locked Steve out of the entire business and then never paid him a dollar. These paragraphs right here are essentially describing how Steve was locked out of the business he helped put millions of dollars to build up Luke, and he was then locked out of the business. Even worse is that Luke was saying publicly and privately that Steve had exited the business for jealous, selfish reasons, and that defendant Luke alone had built Capital Club. This is like a fake guru playbook 101, is to say you did the whole thing yourself, even though Steve's alleging that he spent $4 million on building this business and building up the image of Luke being the successful entrepreneur.
I'm Capital Club's personal brand. We scaled a personal brand. Like, I'm not understanding how you're not getting that. Are you jealous?
No, I'm not jealous. Why should I be jealous?
It sounds like it, because I'm getting benefits that you're not getting, and you're seeing me win. And instead of being happy for me, you're jealous, and you're asking to eat off of a plate that you didn't do anything for.
My ears begin to perk up once I hear the words funds were misappropriated by the owners for their personal benefit. August 2024, the owner's capital account of Capital Club's balance sheet had ballooned almost $1 million. Basically, what Steve's alleging is that there were some questionable internal records, maybe some manipulation of the financial health of the business, and obscure the true flow of funds. Luke and his wife continued to operate Capital Club while denying Steve any access to records, communications, or financial distributions, not even allowing him any access to the company he helped co-found. But in June of 2025, Luke's wife sent financial statements that purported to reflect company operations. A forensic review found out that might not be the case. So what Steve's essentially alleging is that there's a lot of fraud, millions of dollars of fraud by Luke and his wife. I reached out to Steve once I saw the lawsuit. He got back to me, shared with me a long message about a lot of things in Luke's backstory that might not exactly be true. We may have a massive fake guru on our hands. I'm excited to see how this lawsuit plays out. Seems like Steve got screwed over, and I hope he wins in court. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.